So obviously this is a spring, and this is a spring too. These are both compression springs. And this is a spring too. This is an extension spring. This is a torsional spring. These are pretty cool. These are constant force springs. So if I go like this, it applies a constant force no matter how far I pull it back. This looks a little bit like the springs in analog clocks. Those are called mainsprings. This is different though because this extends linearly. A mainspring actually stores a twisting motion. This is a pipe clamp, but it's a type of spring too. As you screw this down, the metal deforms and clamps onto whatever object is inside. In this case, I just have a motor. These are all O-ring belts, but they can function as springs. Tweezers are a spring too. This actually isn't too different from this metal piece here. Now, obviously I can't bend this with my hands, but on older cars, you'd used to have these things called leaf springs. They basically just look like that slab of metal, but bigger. This is a 3D printing thing that snaps together. This is a spring. More specifically, it's called a compliant mechanism. This has 2 springs on it, 1 spring for the trigger and 1 string for the pull. This is just an elastic cord, and this is a rubber band. This blaster has a few different springs. Inside of this big black tube, there's a bigger spring. When you pull this back, it compresses the spring, and when you let go, it releases all the air. There's a little flap here too. That's a torsion spring. This has 4 different types of springs on it. The one up here is an extension spring. The one here is a compression spring. I modified this so it has 2 different switches. This is a micro switch. This is a rocker switch. Here's a push button switch disassembled. There's a little leaf spring in here. It's just a plate of metal. When I click it back and forth, you can see the metal move. This rocker switch has these 2 plastic pieces on each side. They're springs too. You push this through a hole and it'll snap in like that. This is a really cool wire stripper I have. In the back it has this spring. It's a compression spring, but it's functioning as an extension spring. Up front there is an extension spring. Once you pull it back a certain amount, it'll extend this out. On this pivot up here, there's also a torsional spring. This is the front of a candy dispenser I was making. If you turn the knob, it should index into different slots. On the back here, you can see there's these little nubs on this shaft. They slide around in this track right here. This spring I found in a trimmer. It's part of the auto feed mechanism. And put this down, we can see that not only is this a spring, but this is also a spring. And there are lots of other uses for springs too. They're just really cool. They're everywhere. I thought this was really fun to make. If you liked it too, give the video a thumbs up. In the comments, let me know what I should talk about next.